It's Iain from Arty Home. Hope you had a good weekend, and we're gonna kick off this week with part 2 of the Tony Martin story. Great rock singer. Last week we looked at when the Black Sabbath time he had with them, and today we're going to look at his solo career. He was how it all come apart. I mean, let's go back to 1990, to the beginning of the 90s. He'd recorded TYR with Black Sabbath, and at the end of the tour, Geezer Butler rejoined the band with an intention of putting something back together with Tony Iommi, Cozy Powell. In an interview with Geezer Butler and Tony Iommi, they talked about having to get rid of Tony Martin. This effectively ended his first spell with the band. So he sort of went and did he did a solo album, and then after Dehumanizer he came back. So he did this when he started his solo career. Now he's only made 3 albums in all these years because he's got other projects that we'll learn about in the next few weeks. So we'll have a look at his solo albums. So they're all good, I like them. So coming in at number 3, we've got his first solo album, and it was released in 1992, and it's called Back Where I Belong, and it was recorded after in between him leaving Black Sabbath and then rejoining. So on here we have got Tony Martin does vocals, acoustic guitars and electric guitars and some of the guitar solos, and Brian May does guitars on one track. Paul Wright plays guitars as well. Adrian Dawson is on guitars as well. We've got Carlo Franito on guitars, Richard Cottle on keyboards and saxophone, Jeff Nichols, who's sort of followed him about, on keyboards, Mr. Neil Murray, the legendary Mr. Neil Murray, on bass. Lawrence Cottle did some bass work as well. Drummers, we've got Zach Starsky on a few tracks and Nigel Glocker from Saxon on the others. So first track on here is called If It Ain't Worth Fighting For. Love this song. It's one of my favourites on the album. It's a solid rock track. Tony's voice is great. You got a great bass line here from Neil Murray. It's a good rocker. It ain't good enough. Now, there is a little bit of brassy sound on this, which is not the thing you expect on a heavy metal album, but it's really good. Once again, when you've got a great bass player in Neil Murray is pretty good, and Zach's drumming's pretty good on that. I do like that track. If There Is a Heaven, I really like this song again. It's a nice gentle ballad, but the highlight of this song is Brian May, the guitar solo on that distinctive Red Special. Absolutely brilliant solo from Mr. May. Back Where I Belong, the title track, a good solid track. Some singing, you know, what I like about Tony, he can sing ballads, he can sing rock, he can sing really heavy thrashy stuff as well. He's got such a vocal range. Ceasefire. Now this is a very little short keyboard piece by the late Jeff Nichols. You know, he's got a wonderful sound he gets. I mean, some of that eerie stuff. You go back to like the beginning of Die Young, Black Sabbath. It's that sort of thing. It's pretty good. Why Love Comes Next. This sort of is a continuation of Ceasefire. The guitars come in, and this eerie vocal from Tony Martin is fantastic. Sweet Elise, great rocker. The drumming on this is by Nigel Glocker. Great drum intro to this. It's my second favourite track on the album. It's just a good solid metal rock track. Last Living Tree, not a particular favourite of mine, but there are some good points on it. There's vocal delivery from Tony. That's pretty good. Now you've gone. We've got a bass line here by Lawrence Cottle. I think he does. It's a good bass player. It's a little bit different. Then we get a track called India. I wouldn't say it's the best thing on here, but it's a bit of a filler track. It's okay. Angel in the Bed. Again, a little bit of a filler track. This one doesn't do anything. But the best bit on here is The Road to Galilee, which is another sort of Jeff Nichols keyboards, and it goes into a track called Jerusalem, which is absolutely killer. It's very Black Sabbath-ish from his time with the band. Some stunning guitar on this. There's a little bit of an acoustic guitar solo in it. It's a damn good track. Okay, I think this is a great album. It's got a couple of fillers on it, but just because it's my least favourite doesn't mean I don't like playing this. I love playing this. So I'm still going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay then, coming in at number 2, we have his second album, and this one was released in 2005 after his second and final stint with Black Sabbath, and it is called Scream. Now this album, apart from a little bit of extra guitar from Joe Hartford, the keyboards from Jeff Nichols, and Cozy Powell drums on Raising Hell, he plays everything else. This is literally a one-man album. So the first track is this track with Cozy on the drums, Raising Hell. The riffs sound a little bit like Rainbows All Night Long, so does the drum fill, but then again Cozy played the drum bit. It's a great track. I like this track. Pretty cool stuff. Then we get my favourite track on here. It's called Bittersweet. Very Black Sabbath, doom metal. Great guitars. You've got a little bit more extra guitar from Joe Hartford on it. It's a fine vocal from Tony. Brilliant track. My favourite. Faith in Madness, another really good track. It's got that doom metal feel to it. Fantastic vocal again from Tony. Really good track. I'm Gonna Live Forever. Great solo here. You know, Tony can't, he plays all the instruments on this, and he does a fantastic guitar solo. What a talented chap he is. Scream, title track. We got some violin on here. Yes, Tony Martin plays violin on this, and it is really good. Certainly my second favourite track on this. Surely Love Is Dead. The best bit on this is the bass line. Again, Tony Martin. And the drums, he's just talented. The only thing he doesn't play on here is the keyboard. You've got that lovely tone from Jeff Nichols. Another solid track. The Kids of Today Don't Understand the Blues. A really good track. Jeff's keyboard is pretty good on that as well. I do like that track. Wherever You Go. It's a very gentle sort of track. We've got some nice acoustic work on this one, and then as ever Tony delivers a fine vocal. Fields of Lies is the last track. It's got these swirly keyboard runs from Jeff. Some of the guitar work on here is excellent from Tony. Just makes him an all-round man. I think this is a great album. There's not a bad song on this at all. And the remarkable bit is that apart from a bit of keyboards and the drummings on the first track, it's all done by Tony himself. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.3. Okay then, coming in at number 1 then for me is an album that was released in 2022. And it is called Thorns. And it's the first album by Tony in 17 years as a solo artist. I'm sure he's done other stuff in between. So this record features drummer Danny Needham from Venom and former Hammer's full bass player Magnus Rosen. guitarist Scott McLennan. Also features Joe Harford on guitars now, and a guy called Dario Mollo, who he works with on other projects. Greg Smith does bass. Bruno Saar has done keyboards, and he's someone else he's worked with. And we've got guest musicians on here. We've got Pamela Moore vocals on Thorns, and Laura Hartford as the voice actor on some of the tracks. So the first track on here is called As the World Burns. Absolute killer opening track. The drumming on this from Danny is absolutely exceptional. Great track. Tony's voice sounds great after all this time. He still looks after his voice. My favourite track comes next, and that's the Black Widow Angel. Killer guitar work here from Scott McLennan. Tony's finest vocal for many years. It's just absolutely killer track. Book of Shadows. Love the start to this. We've got this sort of choral start, and the drumming of Danny Needham comes in. Fine drummer of thrash metal. Lovely tones on the guitars. Great track. It's a bit of an epic, that one. Crying Wolf, again, solid track. Driving riffs, just what you like. Damned by You, very interesting sort of track. It's got some lovely keyboards here from Bruno. I quite like that track. No Shame at All, typical Tony Martin vocal. It doesn't sound any different than his vocals back in 1990, whenever he started singing. It's just terrific stuff. Nowhere to Fly. I love these sort of tracks. It's metallic, metal, it's eerie, great bass line, fantastic track. Passion Killer comes next. It's just one of those metal tracks that's got a great driving bass line that's real gritty. Some great drumming again from Danny. Run Like the Devil. Another fine performance on the vocals from Tony. Really good track. This Is Your Damnation comes in. It's quite a short track. It's got a great acoustic guitar with double bass drum. You never thought that acoustic guitars and double bass drums would be on the same track. Absolutely pretty good. And then we get the title track, and this is a duo he does with Pamela Moore. Great vocal. It's a great track. One of my favourites off the album. I really don't know how I missed this album last year, but I did. I'm so glad I discovered it. I discovered it about, when was it? Probably November time, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So, and I always had this thing in the back of the mind to do a story on Tony Martin, so I thought, well, this will get covered. I love this album. Played a lot. If I'd have discovered it when it had come out, this definitely would have been in my top 20. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 9.5. Okay, next week we continue the story, and we're going to look at a band that he made a couple of albums with called Empire. Sort of an Anglo-German band. Neil Murray's in it. Don Airey was in it for a little while as well. So people that we know. So we'll be looking at that next week. But we've also got a classic album review today, and we're going to look at another album from the 2000s, and this time it's the band Kings of Leon and their album Youth and Youth Manhood. Okay, just before we go, don't forget we're running a competition, and it's called Battle Royale, where we're going to find the greatest album of all time as voted by you. We've had some great entries in so far. There is a video. That's where you put your entries, or if you want to make your own little video to say why your album should win, you feel free to do that. So I'll be back later for the classic album. Bye for now.